Snow whips sideways across the highway rest stop, turning headlights into blurred halos and voices into distant echoes. A black and tan German shepherd sits perfectly aligned beside a former Navy SEAL, leash loose, posture steady, eyes tracking the drifting white like a silent sentry. A crowd forms near a swollen snowbank where someone swears they saw a hand move beneath the crusted ice. Phones rise. A patrol officer shouts for space, but the storm swallows his authority. The dog's ears tilt once. A single calm command: watch. The shepherd freezes, breath steady, nose lifting with disciplined restraint. The seal drops to one knee, gloved fingers cutting through the snow. Fabric appears, then skin. Gasps ripple outward. A woman, buried, alive. Sirens fight the wind. Someone yells that federal agents are coming. The dog does not bark. He waits. The woman's whisper reaches only the CL. They can't know I'm here. What could force an FBI agent to hide beneath a frozen highway? Tell me what you think she's hiding, and subscribe to Brave Canine Stories before the storm buries the truth again. The frozen highway rest stop feels suspended outside of time, wind dragging sheets of snow across the asphalt until headlights blur into pale halos. Ethan Rowe parks farther from the main lights than necessary, choosing distance without thinking about it, the habit of a man who spent years avoiding attention rather than seeking it. When he steps out, the cold hits with clean silence. Rex moves beside him in perfect heel, leash slack, posture balanced, eyes scanning without urgency. There is no excitement in the dog, only awareness. Travelers cluster near the vending machines and sheltered benches, but Ethan keeps to the edge of the lot, watching the storm instead of the people. Something about the snow line near the far curb interrupts the natural flow of the drifts. Everywhere else the wind has carved soft curves and ripples, but one stretch looks pressed flat, compacted rather than blown. Ethan pauses. Rex feels the shift in attention and stills automatically. A quiet command leaves Ethan's mouth, stay, and the shepherd freezes, weight evenly distributed, gaze forward. Ethan studies the ground another moment, then gives a second instruction, search slow. Rex advances with deliberate pacing, nose low but body calm, each step measured. No pulling, no barking, only controlled investigation. A voice from the crowd shouts that something moved in the snowbank. Phones lift. The sound barely registers with Ethan because Rex has already angled toward the compressed strip of white. The dog stops and looks back once waiting. Ethan kneels, brushing away a thin crust of powder. Fabric appears beneath his glove, then skin. The woman's breath is shallow but present, lashes iced together, pulse weak beneath his fingers. Gasps ripple outward as onlookers realize what they are seeing. Someone calls emergency services, but radio chatter comes back strained and uncertain. The blizzard has locked traffic for miles. While others panic, Ethan notices details that do not belong. The snow covering her is layered, not natural, as if placed by hands rather than wind. A dark SUV idles at the far edge of the lot, windows fully frosted from the inside despite the running engine. Tire tracks lead away from it for several yards, and then vanish under fresh drift, suggesting a sudden change of direction. Several bystanders filming keep glancing toward that same vehicle without knowing why. Rex shifts position beside Ethan without command, creating a subtle barrier between the crowd and the woman, posture protective but silent. The woman's fingers tighten weakly around Ethan's sleeve. Her lips barely move, voice thin as the storm around them. She whispers that someone is watching. Ethan leans closer to hear, and as he does he feels a small rigid object pressed into his palm. A flash drive, still warm from her grip. The moment changes something inside him. He arrived intending only to pass through, to keep moving, to stay detached from other people's emergencies. Instead, responsibility settles over him with the same quiet certainty Rex has shown since stepping out of the truck. The crowd continues recording. The sirens remain distant. The SUV engine keeps running. And Ethan understands that whatever buried this woman in the snow is not finished yet. The storm does not quiet after the discovery. It grows louder in a different way. Voices replace wind. Questions replace silence. As emergency lights finally cut through the snowfall, the open rest stop transforms into a stage of suspicion rather than relief. Ethan steps back to give space as paramedics kneel beside Avery. But distance does not protect him from attention. Several phones pivot toward him, instead of the woman he helped uncover. Someone mutters that he should not have touched her. Another voice grows bolder, accusing him of interfering with a crime scene. The words spread faster than facts. Rex remains seated exactly where Ethan positioned him. Leash slack, ears alert but body still. Shouting rises, boots crunch closer, yet the dog does not react. His calm becomes a contrast that makes the chaos around him feel sharper. A highway patrol officer pushes through the crowd and demands identification with a tone that assumes guilt before explanation. Ethan answers evenly, offering only what is necessary. The officer's eyes linger on Rex, then on the phones recording from every angle, and his posture stiffens as if he too is being evaluated by the invisible audience. Avery is lifted onto a stretcher, wrapped in thermal blankets, her face half hidden beneath oxygen tubing. When paramedics suggest immediate hospital transfer, she shakes her head with surprising force for someone so weak. Her refusal confuses everyone except Ethan, who recognizes the fear behind her eyes. The ambulance doors remain open longer than protocol allows because she keeps asking quiet questions no one else can hear over the wind. Each second stretches the tension thinner. Around them, the crowd thickens instead of dispersing. Social media streams glow on screens. Accusations multiply. A woman claims Ethan could have been the one who buried her. Another suggests he staged the rescue for attention. The storm becomes secondary to the storm of opinions. Ethan feels the weight of judgment settle on him like fresh snow, cold but familiar. He does not argue. He simply watches the perimeter the way he was trained to watch horizons, absorbing patterns rather than insults. Then a man in a dark overcoat steps forward with confident urgency. His suit is too clean for the weather, his shoes too polished for ice. He flashes a badge too quickly for anyone to read and insists Avery must be transferred into federal custody immediately. The patrol officer hesitates, unsure whether authority has just arrived or been performed. The suited man's voice is calm, but carries an edge meant to close discussion. He does not look at Ethan when he speaks, which Ethan notices more than if he had. While the conversation unfolds, Ethan's gaze drifts again to the idling SUV at the edge of the lot. Snow clings to its rear plate, but a gust of wind peels away just enough ice to reveal several numbers, before the frost creeps back over them. He memorizes what he can without appearing to stare. It is a small detail, but small details have ended larger threats before. Rex shifts slightly, not breaking position, only angling his head toward the suited man as he steps closer to the stretcher. The dog's nostrils flare once. The air changes in a way only Ethan recognizes. Then, quiet but unmistakable, a single low growl escapes Rex's chest when the man's briefcase swings within reach. The sound is brief, controlled, and precise, not aggression, but warning. The crowd falls silent for a second, and in that second Ethan realizes the pressure around him is no longer random, it is focused. The ambulance finally pulls away from the rest stop, with sirens muted by the storm, red lights flashing against the curtain of falling snow. Most of the crowd disperses once the spectacle moves, but Ethan does not return to his truck immediately. Something in Avery's expression before the doors closed, urgency without panic, stays with him. He waits just long enough to avoid looking like he is following, then eases his vehicle onto the highway several minutes later, keeping distance between himself and the emergency lights ahead. Rex settles in the passenger seat without command, posture upright, eyes forward, reading Ethan's focus as clearly as spoken language. Traffic is thin due to the blizzard, which makes every moving shape more noticeable. Ethan keeps his speed steady, neither gaining nor falling too far behind the ambulance. The road curves through stretches of forest where snow swallows the shoulder lines and reflects back only darkness. After several miles, Rex's ears twitch. It is not excitement, it is recognition. The dog turns his head slightly toward the rear window, then returns his gaze forward, repeating the motion once more. Ethan checks the mirrors. A dark sedan maintains the same distance behind them through two exits where it could have passed. Its headlights never waver. Ethan adjusts lanes casually, testing the pattern. The sedan follows without hesitation. Rex shifts again, this time placing one paw lightly on the center console. A silent alert he has used in training scenarios rather than everyday travel. Ethan's breathing slows instead of quickening. He lets the vehicle remain visible in his mirrors while focusing on the ambulance ahead. The storm thickens, reducing visibility, but the sedan's position remains constant like a fixed star in a moving sky. When traffic compresses near a service junction, the ambulance slows briefly. Ethan edges closer under the pretense of merging. A paramedic opens the rear doors momentarily to adjust equipment, and in that narrow window Avery's eyes find his through the blur of snowfall. Her hand lifts slightly beneath the blanket, fingers curled around something small. As Ethan rolls past, she lets the object fall against the door frame. He reaches out instinctively, catching it without breaking stride. The flash drive disappears into his glove as naturally as if it had always been there. No one else seems to notice. The door's close. The ambulance pulls ahead again. The hospital lobby smells of disinfectant and overheated air, a sharp contrast to the frozen highway Ethan left behind. Wet footprints stretch across polished tiles, melting into small reflective pools beneath fluorescent lights. Rex walks at Ethan's left knee, leash loose, movement precise, ignoring the curious glances of nurses and visitors. The calm inside the building feels artificial, like a pause pressed over something still in motion. Ethan approaches the reception desk and asks quietly for Avery by name. The administrator, who appears moments later, smiles too quickly. The kind of smile meant to end conversations rather than begin them. She thanks him for his concern and informs him that only immediate family or federal representatives may enter the treatment floor. Her tone is polite but immovable. Rehearsed, Ethan steps back without arguing, but he does not leave. He positions himself near the corridor entrance where double doors separate public space from patient rooms. Rex lowers himself into a sit without command, body aligned with Ethan's stance. The administrator watches them for several seconds before returning to her office. Almost immediately, Ethan's phone vibrates. The number is blocked. A calm male voice introduces itself as federal authority and advises Ethan to step away from the situation for his own safety. The message is not loud, not threatening, just confident enough to suggest inevitability. Ethan listens, says nothing, and ends the call. Within minutes another call arrives, similar voice, slightly different phrasing. Pressure without aggression. Through the glass panels of the corridor doors, Ethan sees Avery being guided toward a wheelchair. A clipboard is placed in her lap. Her hands tremble as she reads. A nurse points to a signature line. Rex shifts position and rises smoothly, stepping forward until his body forms a quiet barrier between Ethan and anyone approaching from the side. His posture is low, controlled, eyes fixed ahead. No bark, no tension, only a presence that discourages intrusion without announcing itself. A security guard starts toward them, hesitates, then slows when he sees the leash slack and the dog unmoving. Authority dissolves into uncertainty. Avery's shoulders sink as she lifts the pen. Whatever is written on that form drains the last of her resistance. Ethan presses his palm lightly against the glass, not to demand entry but to let her see he is still there. Their eyes meet. The pen pauses. Another phone vibration cuts through the silence. Ethan answers without looking away from her. The same voice returns, this time sharper around the edges, reminding him that interfering with federal procedures can carry consequences. Ethan responds evenly that he is standing in a public hallway. The line goes quiet, then disconnects. Rex holds his low stance, gaze unwavering, creating a corridor of stillness that no one wants to cross. Avery sets the pen down instead of signing. The nurse looks confused, then annoyed, but steps back when Avery shakes her head. The clipboard is taken away. The moment passes like a thin crack sealing itself. Ethan exhales slowly, realizing how close she was to surrendering. He has said almost nothing, done almost nothing, yet the balance has shifted because he remained visible. The phone vibrates again. This time the caller drops formality. The voice mentions winter relief contracts, emergency allocations, budgets strained by storms. It sounds like justification disguised as warning, as if explaining why stepping aside would be reasonable. Ethan listens until the call ends on its own. Across the corridor, Avery leans her head back against the chair, eyes closed, exhaustion replacing fear. Rex finally eases his posture but does not sit, staying ready without appearing tense. The building returns to its manufactured calm, but Ethan understands the pressure is no longer indirect. It has found language, and language means intention. Later, when Avery is briefly alone in a quieter treatment room, Ethan is allowed inside under the pretense of delivering personal effects. The air is dimmer. Machines humming softly. She studies his face as if measuring how much he already knows. Her voice is steadier now, stripped of panic but heavy with certainty. She explains that the files she carries are not about a single crime, but a network. Emergency snow relief funds rerouted through shell companies, executives using disaster budgets as private reservoirs. Entire towns recorded as assisted while never receiving aid. The scale is larger than misconduct. It is engineered neglect. Ethan listens without interruption. The information expands beyond personal danger into something structural, something designed to survive scrutiny. The antagonists she describes are not reckless criminals, but respected figures with influence that reaches into offices and committees. For a moment it seems they are stronger simply because they are ordinary on paper. Ethan feels the boundary of his involvement stretch outward. This is no longer about protecting one person from immediate threat. It is about systems that can bury truth as easily as snow buries a body. Rex, who has remained near the doorway, lifts his head suddenly and angles his ears toward the ceiling vent. He steps closer, nose rising, then lets out a soft huff of air. Not a bark, just acknowledgement. Ethan follows the dog's line of sight and notices a faint red glint behind the metal slats, barely visible unless you know to look. A recording device, small and patient listening. The realization settles with quiet clarity. Even the walls are not neutral here. The hospital corridors grow quieter as evening settles. But the quiet is deceptive, like the still air before a storm breaks. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting long reflections across polished floors. Ethan remains near Avery's room under the pretense of waiting for discharge updates, though both of them know discharge is no longer the real issue. Rex lies beside the wall, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed yet never unfocused. Every footstep echoes farther than it should. Every voice seems to pause when passing their corner. The atmosphere tightens without anyone announcing why. The tension crystallizes when two men in dark coats arrive with a wheeled stretcher and a folder thick with papers. Their badges are displayed quickly, almost carelessly, as if authority is something they expect others to fill in for them. The nurse at the desk looks uncertain but steps aside. Avery is informed that a federal transfer order has been approved. The words are delivered with rehearsed calm, but the timing is wrong, the tone too eager. Ethan watches the exchange through the glass panel, noticing how the men position themselves not beside Avery, but slightly behind her, a subtle attempt to guide rather than request. A clipboard appears. Pages are flipped. A pen is offered. Avery's shoulders stiffen as she scans the document, her breath shallow. The language is dense, formal, filled with clauses that blur responsibility. Ethan recognizes the tactic: overwhelm the target with legitimacy until resistance feels irrational. He steps closer to the doorway without crossing it. Rex rises in one smooth motion, aligning with Ethan's movement, posture neutral but attentive. No growl, no sound, only readiness. One of the men shifts the folder from hand to hand while explaining the necessity of the transfer. The motion exposes a loose sheet tucked between the pages. Ethan catches a glimpse of numbers formatted like financial routing codes, printed faintly near the margin. They do not belong on a medical transfer form. Avery hesitates, pen hovering above the signature line. The room narrows to that single suspended second. Ethan speaks softly, not to the men, but to Rex. Retrieve. The command is quiet enough that only the dog reacts. Rex steps forward with measured confidence, tail low, ears forward. Movement calm rather than confrontational. He reaches the edge of the clipboard, grips the protruding sheet gently between his teeth, and backs away in a single fluid motion. The action is so controlled it feels almost procedural, like picking up dropped keys. The men protest, surprised more than angry. But their voices lack conviction because no rule has technically been broken. Rex releases the paper into Ethan's waiting hand without tearing it. The sheet is ordinary at first glance, but the routing numbers are clear now, arranged in columns that have nothing to do with patient care. Avery sees them too, and understanding replaces exhaustion in her eyes. The men demand the page back, insisting it is irrelevant, a printing error, a clerical slip. Their urgency betrays them. Ethan hands the sheet to Avery instead. Her fingers close around it as if it is proof not only of corruption but of her own sanity. In that moment, the balance shifts. Ethan feels the last hesitation inside him dissolve. He did not come here intending to stay involved, but intention has been overtaken by clarity. This is no longer accidental proximity, it is deliberate presence. Rex returns to Ethan's side and sits, breathing steady, eyes tracking the room without hostility. The confrontation never rises above conversation, yet the outcome is decisive because evidence has changed hands. A sharp flicker interrupts the overhead lights. Once, twice. Then darkness floods the corridor, followed by the distant whir of backup systems struggling to engage. Monitors beep erratically in surrounding rooms. Voices rise. Somewhere down the hall, a door slams. The hospital wing falls into partial blackout, shadows stretching across walls where certainty used to stand. In the dim emergency glow, Ethan realizes the transfer attempt was only one layer. Whatever is unfolding now was planned to follow immediately after. Emergency lights paint the corridor in a dim amber glow, turning polished floors into muted reflections. The power has not fully returned, only enough electricity to keep essential systems breathing. Conversations echo from distant rooms, half-heard and uncertain. Ethan stands near the nurse's station with Avery beside him, the paper of routing numbers folded tightly in her hand. Rex remains at Ethan's knee, posture calm but no longer relaxed. The air carries the sensation of something having shifted from persuasion into intent. A man approaches from the shadowed end of the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. He does not introduce himself. He simply holds the device out toward Ethan. A recorded voice begins speaking, a summary of deployments, commendations, then subtle references to investigations that never existed. The tone is clinical, almost bored, as if reading weather data. The message is clear without being shouted. Reputations can be rewritten. Ethan listens without interrupting, expression unchanged, but the tactic crosses a boundary that words alone had not reached before. This is no longer about discouragement, it is leverage aimed at identity. Avery hears enough to understand what is being implied. She straightens, fatigue giving way to resolve. The corridor has filled with a handful of staff and visitors drawn by the outage, their presence turning private pressure into public space. She raises her voice, not to accuse, but to state plainly that federal disaster funds were diverted, that entire communities were documented as assisted while receiving nothing. The words are not dramatic, they are precise. Precision carries weight. Conversations around them pause. Phones rise again, but this time the lenses are pointed at the men in coats rather than Ethan. Rex senses the change before anyone else moves. Ethan gives a single quiet command, escort. The shepherd steps forward with measured confidence, placing his body between Avery and the approaching men without touching them. His tail remains low, ears forward, gaze steady. It is not aggression. It is guidance, a living boundary that redirects motion without force. The men hesitate, their certainty thinning under the dog's calm control. The crowd parts slightly, creating a corridor that did not exist moments before. The hallway becomes a slow procession rather than a standoff. Ethan walks beside Avery, Rex maintaining position just ahead, steering space instead of occupying it. Staff members whisper, security personnel appear uncertain, and the men with folders lose their rhythm. The pressure that once felt invisible is now visible to everyone, and visibility changes its power. Ethan feels the last trace of detachment fall away. Commitment settles not as a surge of emotion, but as a simple decision to remain present, no matter how the narrative is twisted. They reach the records department at the far end of the wing, where older files are stored behind reinforced glass. Avery asks for access under the pretense of verifying her own intake documentation. A clerk, flustered by the outage and the attention gathering in the corridor, unlocks the door without realizing how significant the moment is. Inside, shelves rise in neat rows, labeled and orderly, a quiet archive that contrasts sharply with the chaos outside. As Ethan and Avery step into the room, the overhead emergency light flickers again. The door swings shut behind them with a heavier sound than expected. A metallic click follows, subtle but final. Ethan turns just as the electronic lock indicator shifts from green to red. The hallway outside blurs through the glass as voices grow muffled. Rex pivots instantly, positioning himself between Avery and the door, posture alert but silent. The records room is suddenly its own world, walls of paper, dim light, and a sealed exit. Ethan tests the handle once, then releases it. Avery exhales slowly, eyes scanning the shelves as if searching for both answers and options. Beyond the glass, silhouettes move, phones glow, and security radios crackle without clarity. The boundary that was once implied has become physical. They are no longer being persuaded to step aside. They have been contained. The records room holds its breath in dim emergency light, shelves of files casting long shadows that stretch toward the sealed glass door. Outside, blurred silhouettes move in restless patterns, voices muffled by the thick barrier. Ethan does not pound on the handle or raise his voice. Panic would only confirm the narrative being built against them. Instead, he studies the locking mechanism, the hinges, The ceiling vent, the reflection in the glass. Rex stands close to Avery, posture alert but quiet, tracking movement beyond the door with small turns of his head, rather than tension. The room feels less like confinement and more like a pause before a decision is made somewhere else. Avery opens the folded sheet again, scanning the routing numbers under the faint amber glow. She recognizes one immediately, a regional clearing bank tied to multiple relief contracts. Her thumb trembles, not from fear now but from the weight of confirmation. Ethan removes his phone, not to call, but to transmit. The flash drive she gave him earlier connects with a soft click. The signal is weak inside the reinforced room, yet it is not non-existent. He positions the device near the upper corner, where reception improves by a fraction. Progress bars inch forward, small movements, quiet persistence. Footsteps gather outside, keys jingle. The men in coats return with a security supervisor whose confidence sounds louder than it feels. They speak through the glass, promising clarification, insisting on procedure. Ethan answers with measured calm that they are reviewing personal records and will exit shortly. His tone offers no challenge, only certainty. The delay unsettles them more than confrontation would have. Rex shifts slightly, nose lifting toward the doorframe. The dog's attention fixes on a narrow gap where a folder protrudes from the supervisor's arm, its top page fluttering when he gestures. Ethan lowers his voice. Retrieve. Rex moves with deliberate control, not toward the people, but toward the door's base where the folder edge dips close to the threshold. When the supervisor adjusts his grip, the paper slips just enough. The shepherd's muzzle slides forward, gentle and precise, and he draws the loose sheet inward before anyone fully registers the motion. No bark, no lunge, just a clean, practiced action. Rex pivots and releases the document into Ethan's hand. The supervisor protests, but the protest lacks force because the dog has not crossed the boundary. The evidence has crossed into the room. The page contains internal authorization codes and a reference number that matches the routing sheet Avery holds. Two fragments align into a pattern that no longer looks accidental. Ethan photographs both documents together with a timestamp and sends the images along the same thread as the data upload. The progress bar completes with a quiet vibration. Transmission confirmed. Outside, the hallway noise shifts from persuasion to urgency. Radios crackle. A different tone enters the building, procedural rather than performative. Minutes later, new arrivals move through the corridor with purpose that does not need volume. Identification is displayed slowly, clearly read aloud rather than flashed. Federal auditors step into view alongside internal FBI personnel responding to automated audit alerts triggered by the transmitted files. The distinction is subtle, but important. They are not here because someone called them. They are here because the system itself has acknowledged irregularities. Witness videos from the rest stop and hospital corridor begin circulating simultaneously, aligning timelines and faces. The narrative fractures under its own weight. The security supervisor's posture changes first, shoulders lowering as he realizes the center of authority has shifted. Executives who had remained invisible appear suddenly, attempting calm explanations that dissolve when warrants are presented with specific reference numbers. No one is dragged, no one is shouted down, names are read, devices are requested, doors open. The process is orderly, which makes it final. Social gravity replaces social pressure. Phones that once pointed at Ethan now capture signatures on legal forms and quiet conversations about compliance. Inside the records room, the electronic lock clicks from red back to green. The door opens without ceremony. Ethan steps out with Avery beside him, Rex maintaining a steady position at his knee. Conversations hush not because of spectacle, but because clarity has arrived. The crowd that had fed on uncertainty now stands in reflective silence. Avery hands over the documents she holds, her voice even as she answers questions. Ethan produces a slim credential from his wallet, not waved, not emphasized, identifying him as a certified rescue specialist attached to classified recovery operations. It is not rank, it is context. The disclosure explains his choices without elevating them. Consequences unfold in layers rather than explosions. Temporary suspensions become formal investigations. Public statements replace denials. Resignations are drafted before sunrise. The storm outside begins to thin, revealing the pale outline of morning. Respect arrives the same way truth did, quietly, through accumulation rather than announcement. Rex finally relaxes when Ethan gives a single calm command. Stand down. The shepherd steps back, circles once and rests his head gently against Ethan's knee. No applause follows, no cheers. Just a shared stillness in a hallway that has returned to ordinary light. In that silence, authority is no longer contested. It is understood. Spring arrives slowly in northern Minnesota, not with sudden warmth, but with the steady drip of melting snow from cabin eaves and the soft return of birds that sound uncertain at first. The lake behind Ethan's grandfather's cabin releases its ice in widening fractures, each crack echoing like a quiet reminder that pressure eventually gives way. Ethan spends mornings repairing loose boards on the porch and evenings, sitting on the steps with Rex beside him, watching the tree line regain color. The stillness no longer feels like escape. It feels earned. The storm that once defined every horizon has been replaced by long stretches of ordinary light. An ordinary light, he realizes, is what he had been missing. Rex moves a little slower now. His muzzle carries more gray than black, and his joints take a moment longer to rise from the wooden floor. Yet his eyes remain sharp, following distant movement across the water with the same disciplined calm that once read crowded corridors and frozen highways. Ethan adjusts their routines without ceremony. Shorter walks, warmer blankets, longer pauses. The bond between them has shifted from readiness to understanding. The dog is not retired, he is respected. Age has not reduced his purpose, only refined it. News travels even to quiet places. Avery sends a brief message weeks later. Nothing dramatic, just confirmation that she has returned to field duty. Her tone is steadier than before, her words free of the hesitation that once shadowed every sentence. She does not thank Ethan directly. She does not need to. The absence of fear is its own gratitude. He reads the message once, then pockets the phone and returns to sanding the porch rail, the rhythm of the work grounding him more than any conversation could. The small town nearby resumes its predictable patterns. The hardware store bell, the distant whistle of freight trains, the diner's neon sign flickering to life at dusk. One afternoon Ethan drives into town with Rex in the passenger seat, windows cracked to let in the scent of pine and thawing earth. At the diner, Ranger Ward nods from a corner booth, while Marlowe waves from behind the counter, grease smudged across his knuckles as always. No one asks for details. They speak about weather, fishing seasons, and road repairs. Respect is present not in questions, but in the space they leave unfilled. Later, as the sun lowers behind the tree line, Ethan and Rex walk to the edge of the lake where the ice once held firm. The surface now ripples freely, reflecting sky instead of concealing it. Ethan kneels, resting a hand on Rex's shoulder. The dog leans slightly into the touch, steady as ever. There is no applause, no ceremony, no lingering fear. Only the quiet acknowledgement that standing firm when it mattered has changed something unseen but lasting. True guardians do not chase glory. They stand quietly where truth needs courage. A partial bank routing code overheard in the hospital corridor later aligns with audit spreadsheets, exposing misdirected relief funds. The GPS tracker found beneath Ethan's passenger seat proves ongoing monitoring rather than coincidence, validating Avery's warnings. The forged transfer form nearly signed in the hospital becomes formal legal evidence once auditors compare signatures and timestamps. A recording device hidden in the ventilation vent captures executive discussions that contradict public statements. The second sedan photograph, marked with precise time data, confirms tailing patterns and contradicts official movement logs. The unnatural snow compression pattern at the rest stop becomes physical proof of deliberate burial rather than environmental accident. The flash drive Avery concealed contains transaction chains that trigger automated audit alerts, ultimately opening the investigation. You're just a tourist with a leash. Step back before you embarrass yourself. They erased entire towns on paper. I hid because truth needed time. Sir, lower your voice. The dog is under control. Stay. Retrieve. I served where silence meant survival. Loyalty is quiet, but it moves mountains.